youth ran away. And when he met me, he said, "Madam, all I know is how to fight. What shall I do?" Then, of course, the other grave violation is attacks on schools and hospitals. As you know, in some parts of the world, such as Afghanistan and Thailand, there is attacks on schools, especially girls' schools, to prevent girls from going to school. And this is a terrible reality, even throwing acid at them so that they would not be able to go to school. And then there's denial of humanitarian access, the sixth grave violation, which is that especially for children who are displaced or refugees, denying them the right to food, water, sanitation, even basic education. These are considered war crimes and crimes against humanity. And now we are facing a changing nature of war thanks to what I think Bob will speak about, this new terrorism versus terrorism. We're having situations of suicide bombers who are children now. We have cases where aerial bombardment is leading to collateral damage, where a lot of children are being killed. We have children in detention. So all forms of new kinds of violations also emerging. Now, 10 years ago, Graça Machel, Nelson Mandela's wife, headed a team to look at the situation of children in armed conflict. And as a result of her report and the moral weight of her report, the United Nations decided to create at the highest level, the Under-Secretary General level, an office and a special representative on children in armed conflict. Also, in the last 10 years, we've seen the International Criminal Court indicting people for recruiting and using children for sexual violence against children. These are positive steps. And also the Security Council, the most reticent of all bodies, has actually moved forward on this issue and adopted Security Council Resolution 1612, which has sanctions, possibility of sanctions against those who recruit and use children. So at least for the last 10 years, something has happened. And as I tell people, I hope with the momentum we have gained in the last 10 years, at least with regard to child soldiers, that perhaps within 25 years, like slavery, we will be able to abolish it. But let me end perhaps to say the story of the resilience of these children you meet when you go to the field. And I know the UN field staff are not here to tell the story. They're real heroes, rarely portrayed. The UN in the field, in the front lines, saving child soldiers, working with victims, UNICEF, UNHCR. They can tell perhaps this girl they introduced to me called Aisha. Her house had been, in Afghanistan, her house had been bombed and she lost a little bit few of her relatives. Her school had been attacked, but she was determined. She was going to go to school. She was going to become a school teacher no matter what anyone did or said. And that kind of resilience that gives us hope even now. So thank you.
Are you seeing more young women being violated than you've seen ever before? Has this always been the case and we're just catching up to young women's part in the way they're being treated?
I think women have always been victims in warfare. Sexual violence has often been a weapon of war. It's a way of terrorizing the other population. That's always been true. But I think what is new, unique, are things like women now, both as sex slaves and combatants. We're having this phenomenon now of women, girl children, as fighters, as well as being sex slaves. And we're also having the issue of girls being trafficked a lot for exploitation and abuse, for sex work or for domestic aid. From the conflict areas, they're so vulnerable, they're easily exploited.
One of the things that this show doesn't seem to have are gender barriers, because the men and the women are doing the same work, they're showering in the same showers, using the same bathrooms. We see a woman president before anyone really thought it was going to happen. Again, you seem to have some visualization of the future. What are you eating?
Cheerios.
Okay.
I mean, the gender neutrality of the show was one of the earliest discussions that David and I actually had on the series, because one of the very first ideas when I was approached to sort of do a new Battlestar Galactica, one of the very first notions I had was, well, what if we made Starbuck a woman? Because Starbuck had been a man in the original series. And from that premise, we started then saying, okay, well, if that's the case, she shouldn't be the first fighter pilot. She should just be one of many fighter pilots. And so that the character was not a comment on, oh, look, a woman can finally do this job. It was just that in this world, women do these jobs all the time. And then it became, all right, well, who's the president of the civilian government to balance Adama's military power? And it seemed logical, in a dramatic sense, to have a father figure and a mother figure. I was also intrigued by the idea of sort of subverting the idea that she would be the dove and he would be the hawk. And so there were things to play, but then it became also something that we said, let's not make her the first woman president, or that there's anything unusual about that. And then, oh, let's do co-ed bathrooms. And it just sort of all flowed outward to the point where we just said, well, there's really no gender stereotypes in this world. There's still men and there's still women, and they still have certain things biologically that seem like they're eternal, but that we wanted to sort of present a sci-fi world in which people simply didn't think about that, and there weren't stereotypes and there weren't prejudices, and it was an interesting sort of case to say, well, what if we really played that straight? And we didn't have, gender-based epithets. We sort of decided that the word that rhymes with witch wouldn't really be used as a curse word in the among the people.
Women would be called sir.
Women would be called sir. We just started to say everything was going to be gender neutral.
Although, interestingly, we maintained a certain ethnic tension.
Yeah,
we didn't rid the culture of any ethnic tension. We maintained the idea that there still existed problems and
there were cultural differences between the colonies, and they
the wars had emerged between different colonies that were based on, to a certain degree, on culture and ethnicity, but that sex or gender was not a part of that.
And as president, Laura Roslin, I know that part of it is in the writing, but it is also in the acting. So what were you drawing on? Since there's clearly no
template.
There's no template here for this.
Well,